What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Martial Arts Monday review. And today we're taking a look at a really solid Donnie Yen film from 2011 that I just watched, and it really just blew me away. I couldn't believe how good it was, and I can't believe that I haven't seen it. And as I was looking for a Donnie Yen film to watch for today, I couldn't believe how many he's put out since 2010 or so that I still haven't seen. I mean, I would love to see a box set of his more recent films come out. So there I was, guys. I had Twin Warriors in my hand. I wasn't even sure I was going to do a Martial Arts Monday review tomorrow, to be honest with you, but I did have Twin Warriors with Jet Li and Michelle Yeoh in my hand. A fine film that I haven't seen in some time. I was going to rewatch that and maybe do a review. And then my friend Kenny from Kenny's Movie Palace sent me a message letting me know that today was Donnie Yen's 62nd birthday. So I said, well, the next day for Martial Arts Monday, maybe I'll do a Donnie Yen film as a tribute, which was Kenny's suggestion. So here we go. I mean, that's what a great idea. And I'm so glad that he gave me the idea, because as I started looking for a Donnie Yen movie to watch, like I said, I realized there's so many that I still haven't seen. I have reviewed his last film. I believe it was his last film that was released. I'm sure he's got like 3 or 4 in post-production or pre-production. But The Prosecutor I did see in the theater last January, and there is a review on my channel. So, you know, I know that this guy's still going strong. And this film is called Dragon from 2011, also under the title Wu Xia, or Wu Xia, which means martial arts chivalry or martial arts hero. And I just wanted to mention, I am going to give some sort of mild spoilers in here. I'm not really going to ruin the ending or go into any of that. But in order to talk about some of the really cool things that happen towards the end of the film involving some of the stars of the film, I kind of have to mention a few things. So if you want to check the movie out first and then watch the review, that would be certainly understandable. Thanks. And this is directed by Peter Ho-Sun Chan, who has directed a variety of films. And I think he was a really good choice for this, because this film certainly has some martial arts elements. I wasn't even sure when I started watching it. But it also has aspects of a detective story, which are very interesting. And it's just a solid film all around, with a great cast, by the way. The other cool thing about watching this film, picking this one, is that it features a few actors and actresses that I've been focusing on the channel here recently. First of all, the legendary Jimmy Wang Yu actually plays Donnie Yen's estranged father in this. And he was up there in years. You know, he's no longer with us. So it was great to see him in a role like this in the twilight of his life. You know, I just reviewed Beach of the War Gods a while back, which was one I found on YouTube, which really blew me away, which was directed by Wang Yu. And of course, I reviewed a lot of the Shaw Brothers classics. They're in the Shaw Scope sets, the One-Armed Swordsman, etc. You know, just an absolute legend. So he has a few scenes midway through, and then some dialogue towards the end. I wasn't really sure if he was going to jump into action given his age, but he did at the end, and it was very in close and compact, and the scenes were really good. And playing, I believe, I don't know if it's his daughter, someone from his faction, was Kara Wai, who I've reviewed My Young Auntie a while ago. And maybe a few other films that she appeared in. She really has been something of a revelation to me, like what a well-rounded actress and great martial arts actress that she is. So it was kind of cool to see her later. I almost couldn't believe that was her, because she still looked, in 2011, really good for her age. And her fight scene with Donnie Yen is fantastic. So this is a far cry from the whimsical role that she played in My Young Auntie. But you know, I know she's appeared in a variety of films over the years, some of which I've seen, even horror films and so forth, not really realizing who she was, or that she had, roots in the Shaw Brothers films. In the beginning of the film, Donnie Yen is just a really quiet, well-respected family man who works in a paper mill, who started this paper mill. You see him wake up and go. His alarm clock is really cool too, because this is in like 1917 in rural China. So, they have to make do. They have to make sort of their own alarm clock. It's pretty clever. You just see him get up, he sharpens all his knives, which he takes to work. He has breakfast with his kids. He's a normal dad. His son says, "Oh, I got a loose tooth." Well, a minute later, the tooth is out, and he's going to work at the paper mill. some of the village elders comment on, hey man, we're so glad you came here 10 years ago and opened this paper mill. And I think I'm sweating as much as Donnie Yen in the movie right now, but we'll keep going here. And then all of a sudden, a couple of thugs come in and just decide they're going to rob the place. A really big, mean-looking guy and a squirrely, smaller guy with a sword. And Donnie Yen, and they really start putting a hurting on some people. So Donnie Yen springs into action. But mostly what he seems to be doing is grabbing them and stalling and holding on for dear life. He doesn't come in and just kick ass. You know what I mean? You don't see any acrobatics right away or anything like that. And then at one point, the shutters on the shop close and there's a crowd outside and all you hear is like a ruckus inside. And then him and the big guy spill out into a little pond where the guy seems to be drowning Donnie Yen to death. And then Donnie connects with a punch. And it almost appears to be like a lucky punch or a punch that hits him in his ear and messes up his equilibrium. But no, it turns out he's dead. Now, prior to that, he had gotten slashed by his own buddy's sword, the other robber. Because this is a wild, kind of a more realistic fight. You know, they're grabbing each other and wrestling, and the other guy's trying to slash Donnie Yen. And, well, if you spin around, you hit the wrong guy, and a small body part goes flying in the air. So, anyway, everyone's like, wow, that was close. What a horrible thing. And then this inspector comes, played by Takeshi Kaneshiro. I want to make sure I got that right. And it's really interesting because he's like an inspector, but also like a medical examiner all rolled into one. So his backstory is he let a criminal go or decided to go easy on him, and that criminal hurt him and actually ended up killing a few other people. So he's kind of guilty about that. And he reminds me of the inspector character from Les Miserables, to be honest with you. Because once he gets locked in, he won't stop. And later we learn that he's had a falling out with his own family because somebody broke the law. And he said, well, the law is the law. I can't cut that person to break because he's a family member. So once he gets locked in, he won't stop. So he kind of comes in and he starts to see some things. And the way that they do this, where they kind of flash back and he's in there watching the fight as it unfolds in slow motion, is really cool. And the way they depict what happens inside the human body when certain nerves and pressure points get hit is really cool. So last week I made the point that True Legend was a pretty good mix of CGI and fight choreography. Well, this film is another good example of how to use CGI. You know, when you get to see inside of the body and see what's happening as people are hitting certain pressure points. I mean, you see hearts that stop, and they're talking about the different meridians that they have. You know, of course, this is a country where acupuncture is practiced, and there are needles featured in the film during fight scenes. So he even starts to look on the wall and the ceiling and see footprints. So he realizes Donnie Yen wasn't really just holding on for dear life. He was kind of like propelling the guy back and forth. And then he finds like a tooth. And he realizes at some point one of the bad guys got their tooth knocked out, and he starts to say, hey, the person that was hitting these guys like this must have been really skilled. So he starts to investigate Donnie Yen's character. He finds out that he came to the village 10 years ago, that he changed his name, and that he had a son. He moved in with a woman that already had a son, and they had another son together. And he starts to ask questions, and the Donnie Yen character really doesn't seem like he wants to talk about it at all. So the guy just sort of gets locked into that, does some investigation, finds out he came from a faraway village. At one point, he says, Donnie Yen explains that his father was a criminal who made him kill a prized horse, and it turned him against his family. Well, that's might not be 100% true, and there may be some ties to a very ruthless gang from back where he comes from. So in that regard, this film reminds me of the plot line of History of Violence quite a bit. Well, this guy, like I said, this guy won't stop, and at some point, but the way that he uses his knowledge of medicine to figure this out, even when he's walking next to Donnie Yen, he's looking at the way he's breathing. He's like, man, this guy's not taking the same amount of breaths as other people. His chi, you know, his qigong, his chi is very superior to other people. And he recognizes that, and then he sets him up a few times. They have an accident where Donnie Yen falls off of a bridge and he lands on some branches, and the way he's able to rescue himself, the guy's looking at him and going, he kind of deduces that this is a highly trained person. So he goes to his superiors, and they're not really that interested. They're like, what are you going to bring him in on? I mean, we don't really have enough evidence of previous wrongdoings, but the guy just essentially won't stop. And eventually the old gang comes back into town and they have a confrontation, and they really attack the whole village, and some pretty nasty stuff happens. And then Donnie Yen has to spring into action. And you have some great fights with some henchmen, including Karawai, who has two short swords. Really, I mean, this and Donnie Yen did conceive of and come up with the fight choreography for this film, which isn't a surprise. But not a lot of rooftop to rooftop fighting. There's some rooftop to rooftop running and chasing, but a lot of it's very kind of close in and compact. Just really exciting stuff. The houses are interesting because there's some houses that the animals are on the upper level. There's like a lower level that's sunk into the ground, and the animals are grazing on the upper level. And at one point, there's a fight that spills into a pen where some ox are being held, and the one guy antagonizes the one ox so that he breaks through, and then he could sort of follow them. Well, that doesn't quite work out too well, but really interesting setting. All the sets look really good. Just a very good representation of a village, kind of a poor type village from back in the day. There's a nice little bridge. I love my bridges with a decorative gazebo, for lack of a better word, that people sort of meet under. It's just really kind of beautiful stuff. And what can I say? The film, it was so satisfying on so many levels to see Karawai and Jimmy Wang Yu. And then something happens at the end, which is a definite callback to some of Jimmy Wang Yu's earlier films. Hint, hint. The Man with the Golden Arm, the One-Armed Swordsman. The Man with the Golden Arm is not Jimmy Wang Yu. But all of those one-armed movies. The One-Armed Boxer, the One-Armed Swordsman, the One-Armed Swordsman Returns. Many of which starred Jimmy Wang Yu. I mean, the Shawscope Volume 3 is just full of movies where people are losing limbs. So something crazy like that happens at the end, and I did not expect it, and it's pretty wild stuff. And the detective eventually sort of has to come around and use his knowledge of medicine to actually help Donnie Yen. And it's actually very clever the way they do it, and actually pretty cool to watch. So I won't say too much more about the plot. Highly recommend this film. I watched it on Tubi. The funny thing is, there's subtitles. It's letterboxed, which is the preferable way to watch a film like this. There's subtitles under the black bar, but then there's the same subtitles in the film. So if it's too distracting and you click off the subtitles on Tubi, the ones that they take away are the ones that are in the black bar. But it really wasn't distracting or anything. I prefer to watch films like this in the original language, subtitled in English, so not a problem. Have you seen this? Have you heard of it? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, and I highly recommend Wu Xia, or Dragon, from 2011. And once again, thanks to Kenny from Kenny's Movie Palace for recommending that I do a Donnie Yen film today. Check out some of my other Martial Arts Monday reviews for other Donnie Yen films, and come back again soon. Thanks.